Hello YouTube, I am Lightly Salted and welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to our tutorial series in Uboat. This is the late 2020 tutorial series based on B128 Hotfix 4. This is going to be fairly basic stuff. If you've played the game a few times before, this probably won't apply to you. Going up to the top, we've got our camera modes, FPP, section view, and orbit view. You can select them as per your desire. There are also keyboard and mouse commands that you're probably going to want to know about. I'll have a video linked in the upper right corner for you right here. This will let you know pretty much everything you need to know. I'll also have that link down below in the comments. Moving over to the right, we have the fact that we are in La Rochelle in the northeast Atlantic. It is the 11th of January 41, 10:01 in the morning. Beside that, we have the pause button. Now, pause is not exactly pause, it is just ultra slow motion. You'll notice that everything's still moving, just very, very slowly. So that's something you want to bear in mind. You don't want to hit pause in the middle of a battle, go have a sandwich, because you're probably going to be dead when you come back. Beside that, we have ×1 time compression. Again, this is on the dynamic mode. If we were on realistic, it'd be like ×12 and ×24 or something like that. We've got ×5, makes it all speedy-like. Something you want to know about time compression before you get into the game: when you are tied up alongside or near land or near other ships, so on and so forth, time compression acts very, very differently. It's actually a much, much slower version of time compression than when you're in the open ocean. Moving over again to the right, we have our battery capacity. We're currently at 96%, and it is dropping by 2 points per minute due to our gyro compass being on. The gyro compass is an electric device inside your boat, which we will get into at a later time. Very important to keep your eye on this gauge up here when you are doing a lot of underwater work. Your diesel engines, of course, will not work underwater. You are relying completely on batteries and accumulators. So this is going to be very, very important. Machines on your ship will decrease this even faster. Things like the pump, the gyro compass, so on and so forth. To the right of that, we have our fuel. This is our fuel consumption bar. We have 91% fuel on board. We are currently using no diesel because our engines are not running. We also have a diesel compressor that could be using diesel, but again, that's turned off. We have our oxygen state. We are in the fresh air above the waterline, so of course we are making 600 fresh air per minute, and our crew is using 4 of those units per minute. So it's something you want to keep in mind when you're underwater, to keep an eye on this oxygen bar. When it gets down to the yellow, it's really time to start considering getting up to the surface, and when it goes red, well, your crew will let you know. Beside that, we have discipline. We are currently at 96% discipline, and it is rising. And the reasoning for that is we have varied dishes in the galley, which means we have at least 2 food types available for the crew to eat. One of our officers is playing cards with the crew, giving us an additional 7 per minute, and we have normal lighting engaged, giving us an additional 10% to our discipline. Now, normal lighting being engaged, giving us the 10%, that's only going to be viable when it is daytime. If you have normal lighting on at night, your crew will be cranky. Discipline is important because when it falls to 0, a myriad of things could happen to your ship. A sailor could take a heart attack and die. A sailor could begin freaking out and turn himself in, and expose himself as a coward, start screaming at the top of his lungs, and it's up to you to get that stopped before he gives away your position. Or you could get a sea wolf, which means one of your crew has proven himself to be extremely competent in the face of adversity. Beside that, we have our reputation bar. So this is essentially your experience, more or less, for your boat, not your personnel. The more reputation you gain, you will get little points inside this little circle. The points can be used at your commanding officer to buy things. Things like more crew, things like more research, so on and so forth. Beside that, we have a little icon letting us know about who's working. 2 of 16 sailors are currently on duty. It has no effect on the discipline. The reason it mentions discipline is the more people you have working, the more work they're doing for officers, the crankier they get, because that's just how things go. It will give you an indication of where they're working. Mr. Peters is working the observation point, as is Mr. Conrad Outtro. So that's these gentlemen right here. They are looking out for nothing because we're at port, but they're working, so that's that. Beside that, we have our budget. This will let you know that we have 6,000 budgets. The budget assigned to us by Kriegsmarine for resupply and improvements to our equipment. You start off with 6,000, and we did go ahead and enable the difficult the highest difficulty when it comes to our budgetary constraints, so things are going to be very, very expensive. Once you've got a couple patrols under your belt, realistically, budget's not going to matter much to you anymore because you will have more money than you know what to do with. Beside that, we have a series of icons. This is our telegraph, which will allow us to control the speed of our boat. We are currently at a dead stop. We get a little pop-up here saying we have to take assignment from the officer in the port before leaving. So we will have to do that before we can engage the engines. I can click anywhere I feel like it, but nothing will happen. So if we take a look at our telegraph, it lets us know that we are on diesel engines because we're lit up green right there. Electric is over to this side. We have speeds 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 forward, and we also have speeds to the rear. Something you're going to want to keep in mind, if you dive your boat, you will automatically switch from diesel to electric motors. Something you really want to keep in mind is sometimes it won't go back to diesel when you surface. So you want to keep an eye on your battery use when you come to the surface. Make sure you're not still draining and you are using diesel. Beside that, we have our depth meter. The icons to its right are surface, which we are currently at. We have decks awash, which will lower the boat down to the waterline being about here. Only the conning tower will be sticking out of the water. The uses for that are various. It's not really well modeled in this game, to tell you the truth. If you go down to decks awash, the perks are you are harder to see. The negatives are your air will come in bursts. So you could be not getting any air for a while and then suddenly get air for like 2 minutes and then not get any air for a while, and so on and so forth, depending on how rough the seas are, depending on whether or not you have anybody on the dive planes. There's a whole lot to unpack there. The other good side of running decks awash, if you are coming up on a convoy and you switch to decks awash, you can get to periscope depth easier. This boat does not go under quickly, so that's something you want to keep in mind. And speaking of periscope depth, that is our next icon down. This will drop you down to a depth of 7 meters below the waves. And we have crash dive. This will take you down to maximum safe depth, which the game has modeled at the 150 meter mark. Now, it's very important to note that you do not have to use these icons. You can set the depth to whatever you want, provided, you don't just try to drive it to the bottom and kill yourself. It'll still let you, but it's not a good call. However, if you are on the surface or you are decks awash, and you decide you want to go to 50 meters right away, and you click it right here, the needle will move down to 50, you will begin alarms on your ship. Everyone will consider that a crash dive. The only way to move under the waves with no alarm is to hit the periscope, depth down to 7 meters, you got to hit this button, and then after you reach periscope depth, after you get it under, then you can dial in any depth you desire, and the alarms will not go off. So that's something to bear in mind. Beside that, we have our rudder controls. We can steer the boat in whichever direction we please. Bear in mind that if you set it to, right here, 26 degrees to our port, the boat will just go in circles forever. It will stay at 26 degrees until you bring the rudder controls back to 0. To the right of that, we have the map button, which can also be accessed by pressing the letter M. Again, you're going to want to take a look at that video about keyboard shortcuts. And we can dial way on down to our boat. And here we are, sitting alongside the dock. And we can scroll out pretty much as far as we want to go. We can move around using WASD. If you're moving too slowly, go ahead and hold the shift key and it'll move a little bit faster for you. And here on the map, you can see that we have gray areas, we have red areas, and blue areas. The blue areas are areas held by Germany. This is considered Allied land. Our gray neighbors, they are considered neutral areas. And of course, we are at war with the United Kingdom. Which also means, of course, that we are at war with Canada in all its glory. We have the Strait of Gibraltar. We have little icons all over the place to let us know where bases are. So the one with a hangar, of course, is an RAF base. The one with anchors are a port. You can also have doubles. So like here in Gibraltar, you have a port and an RAF base. Now this map is said to be dynamic. Supposedly these colors and borders will shift and change over the course of the war. Your mileage may vary. And beside that, we have menu. Here we have access to your journal. This is where you will you can review your orders and so forth. There's nothing written here, of course. You can go ahead and type whatever you want. Like you can say tutorial begins. Boom, and now we have a little log of the fact that the tutorial began. So there's that. Whenever you get transmissions from command or you sink ships or anything like that, all of that stuff will end up here in your journal. So it's a good little resource. Below that we have management. Now management can be accessed either from this button or from this gentleman over here who is your recruitment officer. This will give you control over your crew, their taskings, squads, so on and so forth. That's something for another time. We have access to headquarters. Now this is where you're going to do research for new technologies. We have the Uboatopedia, which will link you directly to the fandom page. And here it is. This will give you a whole bunch of good information. Below that, of course, is save. Very straightforward. We have load and settings. Now, we talked a little bit about in the last episode that a few things are changeable on the fly. We could choose to change our audio language, our units, and our coordinate style, whether or not we want darker nights enabled or disabled. We cannot change anything else. All the other selections we made at the beginning are the way they are, and that's it. You made your choice and you have to live with it, kind of thing. And of course we have exit. Down here, middle right of the screen, you have a few icons. We have a detection sort of icon. This is letting me know that we can see another type 7, and we can see the Porta Lover shell. So if we click that, it'll take you into the map, and it will take you to the nearest target. If we click the camera button, it will show us the target that we're talking about. This is the other U-boat, which is across the harbor from us over here, and we'll leave this view. So this will let you know how many targets are in the area. Below that, we have our ship's buoyancy. This will let you know how buoyant your ship is. We are 100% buoyant, which means we are not full of water and sinking, so that's good, right? Below that, we have our detection hint. This is the one we talked about in the last episode. You can choose to turn this off at the beginning of the game. So this will give you your visibility to start with, the visibility of your ship in the current environment. Our hull is making us very, very visible because it's a giant steel hull. It's pretty obvious. We are 98% visible, and the cloudiness of the day is giving us a negative 2% in our favor. So we are only 98% visible instead of 100. Below that, you'll have the noise output of your boat. We are currently making 83 decibels. The gyro compass is making 84 points of noise. The crew is making 80. Torpedo warming, which is going on via Mr. Watcher down at the bottom, 86 decibels. The surface noises, so the waves and so on and so forth, that is giving us a negative 75% multiplier in our favor. So if you are out in the middle of a storm, the more surface noise there is, the harder it's going to be for other ships to find you, of course, and the closer you are to the bottom will also make it a little more difficult. Below that, we have our radar signature in the 1,000 centimeter range. Radars whose wavelength is longer than this value won't be able to detect you. Our hull is completely detectable. We are easily engaged by radar. Below that, we have our icons showing our different officers, and you can choose to move these around by right-clicking them and just pulling them to wherever you want them to go. So as you can see here, we've got Mr. Osterman's icon. So if we select that, you'll see here that we've lit up Mr. Osterman. He is working the radio room. He is a radio officer, as shown here in his little icon. He has 4 points of health. He has no XP at the moment. We also have the ability to change his job on the fly, which will change his priority list. It's not something we're going to get into right now. For now, he is simply the radio officer. We have the ability to get into his character screen. And here we can change his look very much like we did with the captain in the last episode. Once again, we can change his job. We could disband him, kick him off the boat. We could promote him if we had the points to do so. That's the reputation points we talked about. And we can get into his skill set. As he levels up over time, you'll unlock new skills. Beside that, we have the bed icon, which will send him to bed. It will essentially give him free time so he can build up his fatigue bar. Beside that, we have a small icon to add or remove sailors. We'll go ahead and add 2. We clicked it twice. Now, you can see here that he has a radioman working, or a fellow working with him, and he has a fellow who's standing idle. The reasoning for that is if we look at his picture, he has a green bar and a tan bar. The green means he can make use of that sailor. The tan bar means he cannot make use of that sailor. So what you want to do in a situation like this, where one is green and one is tan, is remove one of the sailors. So now 2 of 2 people are doing the job. He is working with his little sailor friend, and we have 1 green bar lit up. You can also do this selection via these bars right here. You can select both, you can select none, you can select one, so on and so forth. So in his picture itself, you can see what type of officer he is. He has a little tiny radio, which means he's the radio man, and he has an icon of a radio because, of course, that's what he's using at the moment. The little 2 above the icon is letting you know that you have 2 types of transmissions you could be picking up. These are radio signals from La Rochelle or Radio Gibraltar. You can use these to play music to increase the discipline of your crew. You'll also see down here at the bottom of their icons that there are these blue bars right down at the bottom. These are their fatigue bars. This will slowly deplete over time. When they're roughly, say, 3/4 gone, they will turn yellow. The reason why that's important is the moment they turn yellow, they're less effective at their work. For instance, Mr. Osterman here, if he was using the hydrophone underwater, the range at which he could hear ships would very noticeably be less. Same as the skipper here with his sight circle, keeping an eye out for ships, it would be greatly diminished. Something new to the build, when your officer's fatigue bar go all the way down until there's nothing left, the officer will pass out wherever they are, and they are completely not usable until they have rested at least, I think it's something to the tune of 20% worth of their fatigue back. So you absolutely do not want to run them all the way down to nothing. You also have this small little icon in the upper left of his little picture, I guess. You click that and it will bring you to his position. No matter where you are, you snap this and you will go to the position of the personnel. If you decide to select this eyeball icon, you will go into first person mode with that officer. So all of that is possible with every officer you've got. You can go ahead and do all of the exact same things. All right, folks, that's going to be the end of this one. This is the absolute start screen. In the next episode, we're going to start talking about getting your boat ready to go to sea. If you enjoyed the content today, consider hitting like, maybe subscribe if you haven't already. If there was anything you saw here that I did not cover to the extent that you wanted me to, please go ahead and let me know down in the comments and I'll see what I can do for you. Until next time, I have been Lightly Salted. Thanks for tuning in. Bye now.